Hello and welcome to Behind the Bearcat. This is the podcast where the Northwest Missouri State University Career Services Office chats with Northwest faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends to hear about their career journeys, advice they might have for students, and how they became Bearcats. I am Northwest Internship Coordinator Travis Kline, and usually you would be hearing from Career Services Assistant Director Hannah Christian and whoever our guest for the week would be. But we are in a different situation going on right now. So I'm actually recording this in my home, not in the beautiful podcast studio in Wells Hall. So if it doesn't sound quite as good, that's the reason why. And we, because of the whole situation, the whole, shelter in place and social distancing and everything that we're doing to deal with COVID-19, we are going to go ahead and wrap up this first season of Behind the Bearcat. We had 25 great episodes. I'm very happy with the interviews that we had, the people that we talked to. So figure we go ahead and end it while we can instead of trying to patch something together while we're all doing the shelter in place and work from home and all that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do over the next little bit here, we're going to look back, have a little bit of a retrospective on our first season, hear some clips from the different guests that we had, some of their words of wisdom, and kind of put a bow on this first season of Behind the Bearcat. So as we got started, the beginnings of the Behind the Bearcat podcast really started in late summer of 2019. Hannah, who you know is the co-host of this podcast, is my boss. She's the assistant director of career services, and she had the idea she wanted career services to do some sort of show. And that's how she put it, a show. She didn't really have any specifics, didn't know if she wanted it to be a podcast, wanted it to be a YouTube show, something like that with video, just wanted some kind of show, some kind of way for us to put content out to our shareholders. So to Northwest students, to fellow staff members, faculty members, alumni, employers, all the various folks that we work with. So that's kind of where the genesis of all of this began, was in the late summer with that idea. As we continued through the summer, we had continued conversations about this. We were greatly influenced by Adam Gonzalez, who would go on to be a guest of ours, and we'll hear more from later on in his Northwest Connections podcast, where he talks to Northwest students. Now he's starting to talk with different staff members and faculty members as well about their journeys and things like that, more from the lens of the diversity and inclusion angle. We loved that idea. We really enjoy that podcast, but we wanted to go about it from more of the career side of things, career advice that they would have. Our office is uniquely positioned on campus and on a lot of campuses that we work collaboratively with almost every other school and department on campus. We work a lot with faculty going into their classrooms to talk about resumes, cover letters, job search, all of our normal topics. We work with other departments on campus, different folks. So we really kind of across the board see a lot of folks across the campus from all different kind of aspects. So we really get to know a lot of folks on campus more than some other offices do. So we really wanted the podcast to be able to tell the stories of the different folks that we worked with on a day-to-day basis. So that was kind of the idea behind the Bearcat, was really, what we wanted to get out of those interviews, to hear how they came to be a Northwest faculty member, staff member, student, alumni, whatever it might be, and then any advice they would have for students who maybe are in the situation that they used to be in. So that's kind of where we began. That first episode that we had, the Meet the Hosts episode, Hannah and I very much were figuring things out. And if you go back and listen to that, you can definitely tell that. You can see that we're kind of experimenting on each other, figuring it all out, getting into our rhythm as we tell our story there. So some things quickly became apparent as we started those episodes. We definitely found that Hannah has some verbal crutches and tics that she uses. She likes to use the phrase gotcha, so pulled some of her gotchas. This is actually just from our first Meet the Host episode and about the first 3 minutes of our second episode with Jill Brown, and these are just a few of the gotchas that she had during that time.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Gotcha, 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 gotcha.
So very quickly became apparent that that's something that Hannah does. It also became quickly apparent in the early episodes that titles are something that I struggle with, even my own title.
So I am Career Services Internship Director Travis Kline.
And of course, struggling with other people's titles as well.
And today we have Stancy
Bond.
Stancy Bond.
James Bond.
Yes.
Stancy Bond.
Stancy Bond. And today we are joined by Lucy Hilliard, who is the graduate assistant for the International Affairs Office. Did I say that
Involvement.
correctly?
International Involvement Center.
Yes. And today we are joined by Adam Gonzalez, who is a coordinator of Equity and Inclusion in the Northwest Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Office.
No.
I've yet to get a title right. And today we are joined by Brian Swafford, who is the Director of Forensics at Northwest and an assistant professor.
No, you senior
instructor.
instructor.
Senior instructor. And senior instructor in the School of Communication and Mass Media.
Good try, Travis.
Yes, titles are always such a challenge. They're
Titles
all
are hard.
long and they don't really mean anything, but
As we entered the holiday break at Northwest, we get a nice long break for the holidays, and we had some episodes banked. I made it my New Year's resolution to get better at titles. So came back in 2020, did pretty well with titles for a little while until our next to last episode with Dr. Peter Adam.
And today we are joined by Dr. Peter Adam, who is an assistant professor in the Northwest Department of Natural Services. Hi, Dr. Adam.
Sciences.
Sciences. What did I say?
Services.
Services. Okay. Well, natural services, sciences.
We're here to serve.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh,
I was doing so well with titles too. It had to end sometime. So
Definitely proof that I'm not going to be 100% on everything, but definitely did better with that. Our first actual guest was our boss, Jill Brown, the Director of Partnerships and Placement at Northwest, and she had a lot of really good wisdom for us. Definitely, if you skipped that episode or it's been a while since you listened to it, go back and listen to it. She's got some really good advice. Jill is a master networker, and she had some really good advice for how to work a room at a networking event.
I always tell people, look at the outside of the room. If you're all invited to the same function, you all have the same value. It's just a lot of time we always think we need to be in the center where all the center people are, because they're usually the popular, they're your CEOs, they're all those people. But I have found in my tenure at all my jobs, if I work the outside of the room, a lot of times sometimes those are even higher ranking people who are just burnt out from the day. And so they're so thankful somebody just came up and sat by their table and started talking to them, because you just alleviated their hassle.
Definitely some good advice there from Jill. And again, she is a master networker, some really good, that entire episode really full of good advice. It was very hard to pull a clip out of that one. Our next couple guests were from the University Marketing and Communications Department. We talked with Mark Hornicle, who is our communications manager, and he talked about his time in student media and kind of what he does for the university. We also talked with Northwest Senior Multimedia Specialist Todd Whittle, and he talked about why students need to keep pushing themselves.
You can't stop evolving as a worker, as a human being, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to keep pushing yourself along. If you become stagnant, right? If you're like, man, I'm really good, well, that's as good as you're ever going to be, right? So you got to keep pushing yourself, keep pushing those boundaries. Like, I want to do better tomorrow. What did I do wrong today?
Mm-hmm.
In a good, healthy critique way, but how can I be better tomorrow? And I think that's good to instill that in our students too, because they're never going to stop growing. They can't.
Some really good advice there from Todd on kind of why students need to continue to evolve and kind of change who they are and not stay stagnant. We had a lot of other really good episodes in there, talked to different faculty members and staff members, some students. We also got Adam on the podcast. Again, we were greatly influenced by Northwest Connections, and we're very happy to have him on there. And Adam had some really good advice on why you need to be authentic to yourself and share your story.
It's easy for me to fall into a pattern of making the people around me comfortable by being a little less myself. And I have to check myself on that sometimes. And what I find is that the more and more that I am myself, that I am truly authentic to me, the more it feels risky sometimes, to just be me and even on this podcast to talk about some of the things I brought up. It feels risky, but what I find is that there aren't enough of us taking that risk. And what happens is people like me with stories like mine feel alone. And they feel nobody's been through what I've been through. Nobody, I don't see anyone who's made it through what I'm going through. And it makes it harder and harder for people to continue to persist through those challenges. And so what I tell folks is that you need to be yourself. And when you can, share your story. Because your story is going to inspire resilience, and it's going to inspire people to move from just getting by, from just surviving, to actually taking pride in themselves, loving themselves, and thriving through whatever they're doing.
So really good advice from Adam there. And again, that's a really good episode, some really great information. You really get to know Adam as a person, and he's a really wonderful person, a dear friend of mine personally and of the podcast and of the Career Services Office. So definitely, if you didn't listen to Adam's episode, go back and check that out. We had a lot of interviews with folks from the Northwest School of Communication and Mass Media. We record the podcast in the Wells Hall Student Publications area. They have a lovely podcast studio that they allow us to use, and we definitely use their resources not only for the equipment that's there, but also their faculty who work in the office. So we talked with folks like Alex Kurt, who is one of the assistant professors there. We also talked with the director of Northwest Student Media and an instructor in the Northwest School of Communication and Mass Media, Stephen Chappell. And Stephen had some really good advice on why students need to do more than the minimum requirements.
One of the things that annoys me more than anything is a student who comes to me and says, I can't get an interview. Nobody will hire me. And I said, how many semesters did you work in student media? Well, I had to do 3 hours of practicum, so I did 2 semesters. And that's all you did? Yeah. If you had worked on student media all 4 years here, you'd have a much better portfolio that would lead you to a better job opportunity. This is kind of your fault.
Another School of Communication and Mass Media professor that we talked to is Jason Offit. He's a senior instructor there, also an author as well, and he had some really good writing advice for students.
And here's some writing advice for people. I always wanted to write, and I was always the best writer. I knew I was the best writer in my high school, and when I went to college and took creative writing, I was the best writer in my creative writing classes, and I thought, and I also got a magazine article published while I was in college, so I'm like, this is easy. Yes. I don't have to work on this because I'm already good. And then I didn't get anything published outside of a newspaper for 20 years. So yeah, the big lesson is don't get cocky and work on making yourself better.
That's really good advice for any major.
For anything, yeah.
We also were able to chat with Dr. Rick Toomey, an associate professor of chemistry in the Department of Natural Sciences. And Rick had some really good insights on being a teacher and teaching in the modern world. And one of the things that he mentioned was the importance of being flexible as a teacher with modern students.
You can't allow the classroom to become pedantic. You can't allow it to be, I said it, you heard it, you wrote it down, therefore you understand it. It's just not acceptable with the way these students get through their high school experience. It's just not compatible. So I think what has to happen is, as a teacher, you have to recognize that what used to be a derogatory term in saying that every student is a snowflake is now the truth, because every student is a snowflake. Every student brings a unique challenge to the classroom because every student has a different set of experiences that shaped who they are when they walk into your classroom. Some good, some bad, and that baggage has to be contended with. So you have to be able to be flexible. You can't just say, well, I explained it. If you don't understand it, it's your problem. You must be flexible. You must be able to say to the student, okay, if that didn't work, let's try this. And if that didn't work, let's try this. And you don't get to say, well, I explained it 3 different ways. If you don't, that's not what the current student needs. The current student needs to be able to have you say, I don't care what your challenges are. I will find a way to break through and get you to where I need you to be.
We also chatted with several students throughout the first season. One of them was Andrew Wagley, the managing editor at the Northwest Missourian. He had some really good stories, a really good story about being fired from a job, which was very interesting. We hadn't heard that from anyone, so that's a really cool story. He also is one of our sports journalism students here, and he had a really good insight onto why he picked that for a major and for a career opportunity.
People are always going to like sports. People are always going to want to consume sports media in some way, and like a good story, if I say the word good story, you could probably think of a newspaper article you read 2 years ago that you're like, oh, yeah, that was a good story that I read. So just to have that kind of effect on people and be able to put into words something that makes you feel something, that was always, I don't know, I just always want to tell a good story. So whether it's verbally and then to do it through writing. So
we had some other really great student interviews too. Tobias Johnson, we also got to chat with him, the president of the Northwest Black Student Union, and TRIO Student Support Services member. He had a really great podcast episode as well. We also talked with Jesse Reed, one of our career ambassadors and a national champion speaking Bearcat as well. He's also the president of the Cyber Defense Club, so really good story there. Another person that we got to talk to was Ty Parsons, who is the grants coordinator at Northwest. He had some really interesting insight on going back and getting a graduate degree as an older individual who'd worked for a little bit, and how that gave him some context.
I felt that I got so much more out of my graduate program after having worked for a few years because I had context. I understood how some of those things that I was learning in the classroom related to the real world. And so I think I got so much out of my graduate program and my graduate degree having worked versus the students that I went to school with, and the majority of them had gone straight through. So they got their bachelor's degree, they went straight into the master's program and had no work experience. And so I think they had some trouble connecting the dots with what we were learning in class. So I I was a non-traditional ish, person
Yeah.
at MU, where I was married. And I took it very seriously. It was different than undergrad. Not that I didn't take undergrad seriously, but after you have some work experience under your belt, you've had a salary before, and now you don't. All of a sudden, grad school is important. It's work. I mean, it's get it done, get good grades, and get out so you can go continue your career. And that's really the track that I took.
Another Northwest staff member we were able to talk to was Bob Mahufsky, the Director of Alumni Relations and Annual Giving. He had some really cool stories on his career path and things that he did, but he also had some good advice for anyone who wants to connect with alumni and the Alumni Association.
But we are all over the place. If you go to the Northwest website, just go /alumni, and we have all of our information there, from how to get involved with the university and the Alumni Association to the different events that we have coming up. I definitely encourage anyone who's trying to connect with another Bearcat to also connect with us, because we can help you find that individual and hopefully reconnect you with that individual. We're here to make sure that our alumni and friends stay engaged with the institution. And so if you want to help us maybe put on in a future event, that's even better. And so we're always looking for more volunteers for whatever we do. But the Alumni Association is here to look for creative ways to engage with our alumni and friends.
And finally, for our final guest of the season, we talked with the executive president of the Northwest Student Senate, Asma Hassan. Had a really great podcast episode with her that definitely encourage you all to go back and listen to. She had a really great answer to one of the questions that Hannah came up with late in the season on what it means to be a Bearcat.
To be a Bearcat is to be intentional and to be bold, I don't know if I can explain that than just the terms themselves, but be intentional with everything you do. Have a genuine effect to everything, and people will genuinely respond to that. Be there, be present, listen to others, and then to be bold. And when you see something isn't right, be bold enough to stand up, be bold enough to speak up about it. Have that voice. Use your voice. Yeah.
Absolutely. We are Bearcats, hear us roar, right?
Yes. Show that pride.
So there you have it. Those are some clips from the various guests that we had. Definitely not an all-inclusive list. And if you haven't listened to all of the episodes of Season 1 of Behind the Bearcat, I definitely urge you to go back and listen to those. There's some really great stuff in there, some really awesome interviews, and you definitely get a feel for the different folks that we talk with. As of right now, the plan is to continue Behind the Bearcat for Season 2. Kind of tentative plans right now. Of course, with the situation going on, we can't make concrete plans for anything. But what we're hoping to do is to launch Season 2 right around the time that the 2020-2021 school year starts. So right around August, and then kind of go on the same path that we had this year, where we kind of continue throughout the academic year, both fall and spring, and then wrap up as we end the spring next year. So that's the tentative plan for Season 2 of Behind the Bearcat. We definitely welcome any comments that you would have, anything you would like to see us do, ideas for guests, things like that. We absolutely would welcome you to do that. You're welcome to reach out to us by email at career@nwmissouri.edu. You can also find Behind the Bearcat on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and on Instagram. So definitely we encourage you to follow on those platforms to find information about the podcast, but then also to interact with us as well, because we definitely want to hear from you. And we want to thank you for listening. It was a lot of fun. Again, kind of started as an experiment, just an idea that started in Hannah's head about having a show for career services and getting our information out there, and really turned into something none of us expected, but we really enjoyed. So again, thank you for listening. It was a pleasure to have these 25 episodes for you over the course of the first season. And again, Season 2 will be coming soon, hopefully in the fall of 2020, as we continue to hear the stories behind the Bearcat of the different folks at Northwest Missouri State University. So thank you, and have a good day, and we will talk to you next time. Hey guys, we hope you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget to follow on your podcast platform of choice and on YouTube. Also, click the little notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an upload. And you can follow us on social media on Twitter, Instagram, and we have a LinkedIn page.